Hello and welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. My name is Julia Tiedemann and today we are going to be making Christmas on the Farm. I love this quilt. I hang it behind my buffet and my entryway every year. It is just such a treat to go by and look at. The barns are so vivid and the green and red is just says Christmas. And so this is one of my all-time favorite quilts. I would like to give you a little tip. I did a red backing with green binding, and before I was going to make this video, I got this out of storage and it was dirty. There was dirt all over it with 3 kids and 2 dogs. I have no idea how that happened. But I washed it before, and I'm always so scared whenever I wash a quilt that's red, white, you know, especially right next to each other. And I will give you a secret that I use whenever I wash quilts. This is what I use every single time I wash my quilts, but particularly when you have a light background with a bold color, red and white, you don't want pink, like are in these color catchers. So these, I will link these in the description box below. I put 3 in this wash. Certainly I could have used more. They were pretty much covered, but I always wash my quilts in cold water. And this one came out fairly well. There is a little bit of bleeding right here is all I can tell on this quilt. Otherwise, it came out pretty much unscathed. And I don't know that that won't fade with another wash or 2. So these are lifesavers because I am too, I don't know what word you would want to use, impatient or I don't know. But I just don't wash my fabric before I quilt. So, so that is how I get away with that. But I would love for you to join me to make Christmas on the Farm. Here is our tree block. The tree block is relatively simple. We are just going to assemble the horizontal rows. But before we do that, we are going to sew corner to corner on all these outer pieces of background fabric that are covering the ends of all the strips that is the tree branches. So all of these will be drawn corner to corner, and I'll show you the direction here. Go this way and this way, all the way up. And then the only really, you'll sew corner to corner, you'll trim the excess off, press that open, and then all your horizontal rows of your tree branches will be done. The very top of the branches. So this piece, you're gonna sew corner to corner, just like you would with any of the other ones. But you're gonna have to do one of them first. So you'll do this one, you'll trim, you'll press it open, and then do this one. And so corner to corner and trim. And that way you will have that 1/4 inch seam allowance at the top so that the top of your tree doesn't get cut off when you sew it into the quilt top, sew it to the block that's next to it. You'll have that 1/4 inch seam allowance up there, so you'll have a nice pretty point on the top of your Christmas tree. So I will go ahead and sew all these corner to corner, trim, press open, and then you can see the horizontal rows. Here are the corner to corner pieces. They have been trimmed, they have been pressed open. Here's one example right here. So this just will be pressed open. And then we will add these side pieces onto the middle, all the way down, add this to the tree trunk and assemble them in rows, and you will end up with a block that looks like this. Here is the holly block, and we're gonna do very similar kind of piecing with this block as we did to the Christmas tree, in the sense that we are going to sew corner to corner on our squares. And this is very well laid out in the pattern, exactly what direction you need to make each of the seams. But you're gonna essentially, you can draw it, or you can eyeball it, or you can use seam tape, or whatever your preferred way to do corner to corner seams is. But we're going to take all these squares and we're going to sew corner to corner to corner to corner on the holly berries, and we're going to sew corner to corner here and corner to corner here to make our holly leaves. And these outside pieces we're going to hold off on for now, but let's do all the corner to corner seams, and we will trim the seam allowance and press that open. Okay, so we've gotten all of our corners sewn, and this does look like a mess, I will admit. It looks very like this is never going to be anything cool, but just bear with me. So we are going to continue to construct the inner part of this block. So just take your pieces, and we're going to do this horizontal row and this horizontal row, and then we're going to piece those two horizontal rows together to create the inside of our block. All right, we've got all of our horizontal rows complete. I'm going to sew this row to this row, and then we're going to come back and put this on here first, the side pieces on our middle piece first, and then we'll complete the block by doing the top and bottom. Okay, so this is what our mess turned into, a beautiful holly block. So I will give you a couple of tips on how to sew corner to corner piecing for edges. One thing is, when you are sewing, it's better to draw on this, and I use these erasable, heat erasable ink pens all the time, and I think it's really easy just to draw corner to corner, because if you get off just a little bit, it does make a difference. And if you're not really experienced with piecing, that's a little bit off here and there, it's just better not to do that. So, and the other thing with piecing this kind of this way is, if you can sew just on the outside, just maybe even touching that line, but on this side of it, so this side of that line by just a smidge. That way, when you flip this, there's just a little extra fabric there to kind of make it come up and meet the other corner. The other thing I will tell you is, let me just go sew this really quickly, and then I'll show you the next little tip. All right, so you can see that the seam is just on the outside of that line, which is the corner to corner line. That way, when you flip it, you're going to get that block, that little extra fabric in the flip that will meet up with the corner. The other thing I will tell you is, rather than going ahead and trimming your seam allowance and then pressing, sometimes if you go ahead and just line that up where the square already is, and then you press that, it will help you to keep your corners squared, and rather than tugging and pulling. See how you can warp that fabric, and that's not good on those corners. So if you go ahead and press it just at a 90 degree, and I will do that, and I'll also show you that disappears. Do that really quickly here. and then trim your seam allowance, then you will have a little bit better corner. See how there's no more ink. Then I trim my seam allowance to 1/4 of an inch, and then when you flip that, it's nice, you know it's nice and square still. And that's another tip for this kind of piecing on the corners that we're doing with this project. We are going to start with the wreath on the barn for the barn block. You start kind of in the center of the block and work your way out. Here are the pieces for the wreath. We are going to do the exact same thing with this. We are going to do corner to corner sewing on the red pieces on the top. So we're going to go corner, 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 corner. And then there's a little green piece under there. It's not quite the same size as the red piece, but we're going to sew corner to corner on the red piece. And this is every single piece, how many you need to cut, how big the pieces are, it's all in the pattern. And we're going to sew corner to corner here, and then here is a square underneath these green pieces. And again, just like the berry, the holly berry, we are going to sew from corner to corner on all of these to go around this. And we will have a row here, and then there's a piece missing here. This is the bow on our wreath. And I've already cut the gold pieces, but I wanted to show you how to go ahead and cut these. So you're going to cut a square piece, and it's outlined in the pattern, the size for that. And you are going to cut this piece corner to corner. And you're going to leave it right where it is. And you're going to turn your ruler. And you're going to cut that direction. So you're going to end up with 4 triangles. And the wreath goes right here. The little bow for the wreath is there. And then we have these 2 pieces that go here. So when you're sewing, you're going to sew these 2 pieces together on this side. You're going to sew these 2 pieces together on this side. And if you press towards the gold or the green, whichever one, just pick one, then you can nest your seams when you put this 1/4 square triangle block together, and you will end up with it with the seams nested and this being all put together. So if we put this together, we do all of our corner to corner sewing on these pieces here, then we will have our wreath put together. Here are all of our corners sewn, and we have the bow done. We will just assemble these pieces to the center and these pieces to the center to make rows, and then we will sew the rows together, and that will complete our wreath. All right, we've got our wreath done. There are 2 little side pieces that go onto the wreath. And then we are going to make the top of the barn. And then there are some side pieces that go down on either side of the barn. And we're going to be using the 2 at a time half square triangle method for this, these 2 pieces. And essentially what that is you just take your barn red and your white. And then we're going to use our heat erase pens, and we're going to draw a line from corner to corner on the lighter fabric. And we are going to sew a seam 1/4 of an inch on this side of that and 1/4 of an inch on this side of the line. And then we're going to cut this right down the line. And when we open those up, we will have 2 half square triangles. And we're going to do 2 of these per barn block. So I just chain pieced these through the machine, and we'll cut them apart. And we'll cut these down the middle. And when you do that and open them up, you will have half square triangles. When you press these, you will have to cut the dog ears off. And then I will show you what to do with these in the block. So I put these little side pieces that we just talked about on the wreath. And then we have our half square triangles trimmed, pressed, and they are going to be put into the block just like this. What we're going to do is we are going to attach the top 2 together along this seam line. And this is going to be attached to our wreath. And then we are going to attach these 2 pieces along this seam line. And once we get that put together, I'll be back. Okay, so we have our 2 half square triangles sewn together, put on the top of the wreath. We've got our other 2 half square triangles put on the bottom of these pieces. We're going to sew this seam right here, and that's going to put together the top of our barn. And the rest of the barn, we'll go through it, but it's just straight piecing, much easier than the top. Not that this was hard, but there's some little pieces there. And I was going to share this tip too. If you turn this over, you can see we've got a lot going on back here with seams here, there. I tend to press my seams open. I just think things lay a lot flatter, especially when you've got a lot of seams going on in the back. But I also use a clapper, and I will link this in the description box below. But essentially what you do with this is you press your seam, you put this over the top, kind of put some pressure on it, and let it cool a little bit. And it really helps those seams lay nice and flat so that you can work more easily with your piecing. So let's put these sides on, and then we will get to the bottom of the barn. Here is the bottom of the barn. Here's the barn door, the barn windows. This fabric doesn't exactly match what I've got on my quilt because I couldn't find that fabric. Again, I don't know what I did with it, but regardless, this will work just fine. So we are going to, I think the easiest way to do this is to take this red piece and sew it to the barn window, and then take these 2 pieces on either side of the windows and then sew them to the piece that you construct here, and then sew both of these pieces to the barn door, and then connect the top and the bottom together with this strip here in the middle, and your barn block will be complete. So just as a recap, here is our barn block that is completed. We did our hollyberry block, and we did our evergreen tree block. This pattern is Christmas on the Farm. It is pattern 124 by Easy Piecy Quilts. And the pattern includes a pillow, which is basically the holly berries surrounded by the barn. It's a large 24 by 24 inch pillow. And we've got 2 quilt sizes, the throw and the queen. And as you can see, my children are home from school. So if you would like to see more videos, just give me a thumbs up. And I'd love for you to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.